I recently decided that I want to be a dark chocolate person and a coffee person, and these are things that I really don't like, but I have been forcing myself to consume coffee every morning, to consume dark chocolate every day, and just recently, actually as I was on my way to another neuroscientist's office at Princeton, Michael Graziano, I found myself drinking a nitro cold brew and relishing it and like wanting the next sip. And what I found so surprising about this was I really don't like the taste of coffee, but I was still really coming to enjoy it. And I wanted to ask what it is that's happening in my brain in particular right now as I'm going through this coffee and dark chocolate arc.
I mean, one of the big things that's going on is that your brain is always trying to figure out how to credit things in the future with what you did in the past. So if you drink something and some minutes from now, you're feeling more energized and alert and so on, your brain does this credit attribution and tries to figure out what the heck were you just doing some minutes ago. But I think this is a big part of what's going on with coffee addiction. I have my coffee cup with me here. And yeah, I was actually wondering about this the other day. Many cups of coffee that I get don't taste that good. I was in the bank the other day and they were giving out free cups of coffee and it was super terrible. And yet I drank it because I'm addicted to something else about it, not just the taste, it's the consequence.
What is happening though, maybe at a neural level when my brain is undergoing these changes? Maybe you need a specific experiment or something involving coffee to answer that.
Well, it's pretty straightforward to answer because this is generally what brains are built for, is figure out what is rewarding in the world and how to strengthen those connections such that you seek that. There have been a million animal experiments on this for many decades. But yeah, you have these systems in the brain. This is all about brain plasticity, as you introed this with. The system is trying to figure out what are the things that are giving me something that I need, whether that's sugar or energy or whatever it is, or pleasure in some way. And then it strengthens the connections for those things. So you notice them more, you seek that your behavior has changed, so you seek those things more.
I guess abstracting now from the particular situation to the general, is there a point at which brain plasticity peaks in our development and then a time when it reaches a trough or it's just steadily declining?
The answer generally is that it declines with age. It does not ever hit zero. I mean, at the age of 90, you can learn a new person's face or a new movie star, or you can start learning a new language, things like that. A big part of plasticity, this was my last book called Livewired. Big part of plasticity has to do with relevance and motivation. You've got these neurotransmitter systems that are all about what is relevant to me. And so the part of the reason that learning a language is harder as you get older, I'm a lot older than you are, it's hard for me to learn, is because I don't have quite sufficient motivation for it. I really want to, but it's not the same as dropping myself into a country when I'm 20 years old and having to do it, or getting some girlfriend and it's like a relationship issue that I need to be able to communicate at the age of 20 or so. It's a totally different situation. When you're my age, you've got 100 other pulls on your time. So that's a big part of what's going on with brain plasticity. But in answer to your question, at the age of 2 is when you get the most synaptic connections. So you get all, 86 billion neurons. That's all you're ever going to have. You don't make new neurons, with a tiny possible exception of what's called neurogenesis. But that's very debated in humans, whether it happens. And even if it does happen, it's probably not much. So you got your neurons that you drop into the world with. Those are forming connections with each other. And what happens is in the first 2 years of life, they're making incredibly dense connections. They're connecting. It becomes like an overgrown garden. And from the age of 2 onward, the whole game is about pruning. It's about reducing those connections. So you go from, let's say, 20,000 connections per cell down to about 10,000 as you get older. And so a big part of plasticity and learning the world that you happen to have dropped into is about getting rid of things rather than making connections. The other thing I should mention here is that different brain areas have different windows at which they close. So for example, your visual system drops in the world, realizes, okay, there's edges, there's orientations of lines, there's angles, there's color. Okay, That's it. And so your primary visual system crunches down and essentially locks into place pretty early on. In contrast, your what's called your somatosensory system, which is, understanding your body, and your motor system, which is driving your body, those are plastic your whole life, which is why at any age you can learn how to use a pogo stick or a hang glider or some new device, hoverboard, because your system, the argument I made in the book is that I suspect that this is because of the stability of the incoming data. In the visual system, everything stays as it is, and as a result, your system says, okay, I'm going to lock down. But in the case of your motor and somatosensory system, they say, whoa, look, you're getting a little fatter, a little thinner, a little more muscly, a little less muscle. You broke your ankle, whatever. And so it stays flexible because you're always changing.
This is maybe a naive question, but is learning just a particular instance of brain plasticity?
Yes, that's exactly right.
Okay, and you mentioned that in Livewire, relevance is emphasized as one of the crucial components of brain plasticity. And one of the things I'm wondering, because unfortunately I have not read Livewire, but I'm sure a lot of people would be interested in this, are there recommendations for how to increase brain plasticity and to improve learning outcomes?
Yeah. The main trick that I tell all my students here at Stanford is you actually have to figure out why something is relevant to you in that moment. So let's say you're studying for the big test tomorrow. You just have to figure it out. Like, okay, look, why am I actually doing this? Maybe I hate this class. Maybe I'm not into this right now. But I really want to go to medical school, or I really want to impress my mother, or I really want to impress that person across the hallway, or whatever. Like, you figure out what it is that drives you in that moment, and you hang on to that, and that's what gets the acetylcholine going, which is telling you about relevance in the brain, and it's causing changes to happen. The interesting part is there's a whole collection of experiments showing that if you do some action over and over again, you can see these big brain changes. But if there's no motivation and you do the exact same thing over and over and over, no brain changes. In other words, the relevance has to be there. Now, what does relevance mean? It actually equates to a cocktail of neurotransmitters that are present in the brain, main one being acetylcholine. And you need that there in order to say, okay, look, something should change. Because look, the truth is that most things in our life, we take in so much sensory data and it's irrelevant. So you don't want to change based on the number of cracks in the sidewalk or what shirt somebody was wearing or the car that was stuck in front of you at the traffic light. It just doesn't matter. But what you want to do is learn, okay, these are the things that matter to my life, and I'm going to mold my brain around those.